the Nets and the Warriors. Like, what were your thoughts watching that one?
Yeah, I mean, first, it was awesome to see basketball back in a non-bubble fashion. I wish
Mhm.
that, you could see it with crowds roaring and everything, but obviously, for obvious reasons, that's not possible or even a thing that we should be talking about. It's sad that we can't, but yeah. So that's the reality of I was really surprised by how well the Nets played right off the bat. I expected both the Nets and the Warriors to kind of struggle immediately just because they're both integrating new types of rosters. But the Warriors look like what I expected, and the Nets just look like a well-oiled machine, like a championship team that had been playing well together. We'll see if that continues. Kevin Durant looked like Kevin Durant, so that's a good thing. He moved like Kevin Durant. He was shooting like Kevin Durant. He was doing everything like Kevin Durant. And Kyrie Irving, we get so caught up into Kyrie Irving's antics about like what he says, not talking to the media, all these different things that we sometimes, at least for me, I just forget sometimes how good Kyrie Irving is. And he's unbelievable. And he can be the best point guard in the NBA in any game that he plays. It's just the questions with him and his personality. But yeah, the Nets, it's promising. I don't want to overreact to one game, but the Nets look very promising and the Warriors look like the Warriors, and they're going to be in a battle to get into a playoff spot in the West.
Yeah. So when I was watching the Nets, my first thoughts were KD looks like he has never been injured at all. He looked fine. And I think one thing about Kyrie is he's better suited as the number two guy who can be someone who just like plays ISO. And as a number one, I feel like that doesn't work. I feel like you have to be a better distributor, kind of like that LeBron. Kawhi to some extent is a better passer than Kyrie is and like shot creator. But when Kyrie's the number two, he excels because not all the pressure's on him, and that's something he didn't have on the Celtics, right? He was kind of the number one, but on the Cavs with LeBron, he was the number two, and we saw how good he did. So having defenses focus more on KD than Kyrie is going to help Kyrie tremendously. And for the Warriors, Oubre and Wiggins they shot terribly. Steph didn't do as much as I thought he would. I kind of thought he would go ballistic this
They were
year.
missing Draymond.
Yeah, they were missing Draymond, which would have helped a lot with all like the defensive deficiencies and whatnot. But I thought Steph would have done more in kind of the first half because it was a blowout right after the first quarter and a half, probably I'd say. So I thought Steph was going to do more to I don't know, play like his former MVP self, but he didn't. And
Yeah.
I'm worried. But what do you think about Nets in the East? So I know they're probably a top three team in the East right now, and it's a star-driven league. They're kind of the only team in the East with two just like bona fide proven stars in my eyes.
No, I think the Celtics have two stars in Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. None
I
at the level of Kevin Durant, but I think Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are in the top. I think
I
Jason
think
Tatum
they're
for sure
not
is a top 15
below.
player in the NBA, which
I'd
Kyrie
say they're
Irving is
not
also.
below.
Huh?
I'd say they're a notch below. I wouldn't say they're stars. I'd say they're all stars, but I wouldn't say they're like KD's a superstar. He was a top five player for multiple years. Kyrie on the Cavs looked like a top 10 player, you know.
Yeah. Oh,
But
real
those
quick,
guys are not there yet.
with the Warriors, I did want to shout out that James Wiseman looked great.
Yeah,
Like
he did.
that looked
He
like
looks
something.
promising.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I really like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and I think this is the year they both elevate to where people say they're more than just all stars, especially Tatum. And I think Brown's just
Yeah,
been underrated because he's an All NBA level defensive player, which Kyrie Irving isn't a good defensive player. So I really think that the Celtics are the one team that could give the Nets trouble. I don't believe in the Bucks at all. I just don't believe that much in Giannis as a playoff player. And I hate doing that to minimize players, especially because Giannis has had not the best help and not the best supporting cast. I mean, Eric Bledsoe in the playoffs is not the best. But for me, with Giannis, there's just a lack of a well-rounded game, and it gets exposed every year and people harp on it, but it's not just the three-point shooting or the jump shooting. The thing they talked about this year is that they're going to put him in the post more. We'll see. He hasn't had the most refined or well-rounded post game thus far in his career, and he doesn't have like the greatest touch around the basket, like say a Zion Williamson, where it feels like every shot he puts up just goes in because his touch is that good. So we'll see if he's better around the basket that way. I just don't think the Bucks have enough surrounding him, and I don't think he's good enough to just elevate them for them to be at the level of Boston and the Nets.
My thing with Boston is I don't think Kemba as a third player is good enough. If your top two players are not like bona fide top five players, um, I just don't think Kemba is like. I just don't think he's good enough, and he's getting paid a lot. I think he's like a top 10 point guard, but he's like towards the lower end of that. If he was like a top 5 point guard, like I don't know, any of the top 5 point guards really, you could say he's in there. I would throw the Bucks in there. This is the best roster they've had with Giannis. Adding Drew Holiday's huge. Torrey Craig, nice. And then the Heat. What do you think about them? Do you think they have anything? Because I personally, I'm kind of anti-Heat, like making it back.
Yeah, I'm not bullish on the Heat doing what they did last year. I think they have an awesome team, awesome story, but I think the bubble contributed a little bit to how they succeeded because I think there's a road playoff game and stuff would have been a different animal just because of the style of the all-around team play they had with the veterans they had and stuff. Like, I think a Tyler Hero, I'm not sure. Like, it's not that he isn't really good. He's really good, really talented, but I'm not sure if he would have had that historic level of playoffs as a rookie if he had to go play in Boston and play in Indiana and stuff like that. I think he would have been good, but not that level. I don't know. I think the Nets, I think the East is crazy good, like crazy good. I think it's underrated how good it is because I think you have 4 teams that could legitimately win it in terms of the Bucks, even though I'm not the highest on them. The Nets, the Boston Celtics, and then possibly I think the Miami Heat and maybe even Philly now that they have some shooting.
Raptors.
Yeah, and maybe even Philly now that they have some shooting around Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid.
Yeah, the East will be tough.